All right. Morning. Welcome back. Probably a bad day to ask you to fill out course evaluations when I tell you that I'm giving you all this homework, but please fill them out. The dean, he loves it when they get filled out, so better that you fill them out. I'm not going to say better that you, well, if you don't have anything, my mom always says if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. But I guess that doesn't apply to course evaluations. They're anonymous, so say whatever you want. If you hate me, let me know. I won't be crushed. But if you like me, let me know that too. I'll be flattered. Okay, so 2 more homeworks for the class. Final exam is unfortunately scheduled for the 22nd of December. I have nothing to do with the scheduling. I probably hate it just as much as you. I would have liked final to have been earlier. Any questions? Everybody have a good break? Glad it's over? Yeah. All right. So let's see. So we were discussing queuing and routers. Queuing policies and routers. And last we went through a bunch. There's first come, first serve, round robin, virtual clock, fair queuing, and then for these there are weighted variations. Yep. And want to just give a quick summary to get everybody up to speed. First come, first serve is just, doesn't really need much of an explanation. It's first come, first serve. AKA FIFO. She goes first in, first out. Round robin. All right, that's just each flow gets a turn. Regardless of arrival order. All right, unless no packets processed. During its turn, and fair queuing. Because each flow has a clock. AKA a counter. Incremented each time packet is processed. Flow as smallest clock has priority. Packet in queue. Gets processed next. And there's a priority queue. Right. Which again doesn't need much of an explanation. Okay. And we're going to model these things. So use what are called finite state machines to do the modeling. FSMs for short. Okay? And they're very equivalent to the way you depict the Markov model, except for general finite state machines, you don't need to make the Markovian assumptions. So there are states and transitions. Okay? And the state indicates current status of the queuing system. And a transition is an event reaction combo, okay, triggered by event reaction performed transitions take from one state to another. Take the system from one state to another. Okay? So let's start with a state diagram for a FIFO queuing system. So FIFO, CFS, same thing. With a 3-packet buffer and let's make it a 2-packet buffer. 2-packet buffer and books. Okay, turns out that FIFO is probably one of the harder ones to actually model using a finite state diagram. Okay, so and let's suppose what we want to do is we want to accurately model what the queuing system or router is currently processing. At any given time. Okay? So we need to draw this state diagram, and it's always supposed to be accurately depicting what should be processed at any given time. Okay? So what information do you need to retain for first come, first served system in order to do this properly? Yeah, Patrick.
States it could be in.
Yeah, well, the states you could be in, right? But what should each state represent, for instance?
You need to know the most recently accepted packet. Most recently received packet? Okay,
So that's conjecture one. State should capture most recently received packet. Okay, if I do that, I need 3 states, right? Most recently received from nobody, from flow 1, or from flow 2, right? Okay? So suppose I'm in this state. Let me just find some functions that we use for transitions. So A of I is the event that a packet arrives from flow I. Okay? i.e. return 0 if Q empty, 1 if, or flow number if Q not empty and flow I currently being processed. Let's see. D of I is the event. Let's just say D. D is the event that the processor, router, finishes processing the packet. And okay, so this is an event. This is a way I can check the status. And now here's a reaction. Piece of I is going to mean process a packet from flow I. Okay? So now using these events and states that Gary suggested, let's see if we can capture the behavior of a FIFO queue. So let's start over here. No packets have arrived yet. Okay? And as soon as a packet arrives, okay, so let's say a packet arrives from flow 1. Well, I'm clearly going to transition over here. Right? And I'm going to start to process that packet. So I should also give the labeling convention. Okay, so I'm going to label a transition with a condition or an event, and then a reaction. So this is saying that if I'm in the no packets received state, and I get a packet from flow 1, then I'm going to start processing that packet, and I'm going to move to this state because the most recent packet received was from flow 1. Okay. Now when I finish processing that packet, I'm still in flow, my most recently received packets from flow 1, and even if I don't finish processing it, my most recently received packet will be flow 2, but I can't necessarily start processing it right away because I may not have been finished with the previous one. Okay. Anyway, what you're going to find is that this set of states isn't sufficient. Doesn't remember enough about the queuing system. mean, suppose, remember I said I have a two-pack buffer. Suppose a packet arrives from flow 1 and from flow 2, right? In order to do FIFO correctly, I have to remember that I have a packet from flow 1 and a packet from flow 2 in the queuing system, and that they arrive in that order, such that when I'm done processing my current packet, I can then process the packet from flow 1, and then when that's done, I can process the packet from flow 2. Okay, so I need more information. Okay, so does anybody have any ideas? Yeah, David.
Or every packet, how many packets are in the buffer?
How many are in the buffer? Well,
Which ones?
And
Yeah, good question.
Well, suppose I tell you I have a packet from flow 1 and a packet from flow 2 in the buffer.
the order.
And the order, yeah. Okay, so each state must remember the packets, well, the number of packets in the buffer, which flows they came from, and arrival order. Okay, so I can have 0, 1, or 2 packets in the buffer, because like I said, it's a two-packet buffer system. Yeah, Gary.
What's a buffer?
Oh, so I've got a queuing system, okay, and there's some packet being processed. And then there will be packets waiting to be processed, okay? And those are stored in the buffer. Okay, so 2-packet buffer means that I'm only going to hold on to 2 packets. If a third packet comes, I'm going to drop it. Okay, while these packets are sitting in the buffer. Okay? So for this example, okay, so we want to keep track of what packet's currently being processed. So, all right, I'm going to stick with what I said. Okay, so we've got a packet currently being processed, and we've got 2 packets in the buffer. Okay, how many different states can there be for this system? Okay, we can have the state where processor and buffer empty. Well, here, I'm going to write each state like this. I'm going to have a P, slot 1, and a slot 2. Okay, and this P is going to represent packet being processed. Currently, it's going to equal 0, 1, or 2. 0 meaning no packet, 1 meaning from flow 1, 2 meaning from flow 2. Okay, and this is going to be the packet waiting on deck. This is the packet waiting on double deck. Okay, a little baseball terminology, right? This one's up to bat, it's being processed, then, you know, an on-deck circle, right? Whatever packets in this S1 slot, and then double deck, which I don't think they use it in Major League Baseball. We used it in Little League. You know, one guy would be on deck warming up, and if, you know, in Little League you're real nervous, so then you're on double deck, you get out there and start warming up too. And so we'd always have, in my Little League team, we'd always have two guys warming up for bat. The guy who's up to bat next and the guy who's up to bat after that. So we call it a double deck. Anyway. All right. Okay, so we have a state with 0, 0, 0. Hang on. Let me leave some room for the transitions as well. Let's see. Right? No cues in the system. Nobody being processed. Nobody on deck. Nobody on double deck. Okay. And then you could have a packet from flow 1 being processed, or a packet from flow 2 being processed. Nobody on deck. Nobody on double deck. People follow the way I'm labeling these states so far? This state means that there's nothing in the system. This state means that a packet from flow 1 is being processed and the buffer is empty. It means a packet from flow 2 is being processed and the buffer is empty. Okay? Then you could be in a state, and we'll never be in a state where nothing's being processed and there's something in the buffer. Right? Because as soon as nothing's being processed, it would be moved, and something's in the buffer, it'll be moved, the first item will be moved to the processor. Okay? Now we need to consider the state where we've got, well, let me draw it over here. Packet from 1 being processed, packet from flow 1 on deck, nothing on double deck, or packet from flow 1 being processed, packet from flow 1 on deck, packet from flow 2 on deck, nothing on double deck. Okay, and likewise for flow 2. Okay, so now I take care of all the cases where the buffer is empty or there's one packet in the buffer. Right, now I need to take care of all the cases where there are two packets in the buffer. So let's see. We have 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, 1. 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2. Right, I think those are all my possible states. Right? Who follows this so far? Okay, I mean, for the information I want to accurately model what queuing system is currently processing at any given time. Hopefully, you should be convinced that this will be enough. Okay, whenever a packet finishes being processed. Okay, so for instance, suppose I'm processing packet 2. I've got that information. I've got packet 1 on deck and nothing on double deck. If this packet finishes processing, okay, what I'm going to do is this packet that's waiting in the buffer is going to move to being processed. So I'm going to move from state 210 to state 100. Right? So for instance, this transition happens when the packet in the processor finishes being processed. Okay? And then what I do is I start processing a packet from flow 1. And I move to that state. Right? Where are my labels? Yeah. Okay? If I'm in this state, and a packet arrives from flow 2, let's say, then I'm going to move to this state over here. Okay, this is arrival from flow 2. Okay, and I don't change anything that I'm doing. I'm processing a packet from flow 2. I'll continue to process it. Okay? If I get an arrival from flow 1, 2, 1, 2. 2, 1, 2, 1, 1. Arrival from flow 1 takes me here. And that's pretty much all the transitions coming out of that one state over there. And I've got to do this for all the states. So for instance, in these states where the buffer's already full, if I have an arrival from flow 1 or arrival from flow 2, I drop that packet. Right? There's no room in my buffer. So I just stay in that current state. Okay? If I'm in this state and I complete the processing of the packet, then I'm going to move to 210. I'll process the packet from flow 2. Yeah, Gary.
So in every transition, you can either only process or have an arrival.
Every transition, well, you can have some completion. You can have a completion, and then you can start processing the next packet. Okay? Or yeah, you can have an arrival. And that's really all the information we need to maintain in order to know what packet gets processed next, or what packet should currently be processed.
I mean, like can you do both at the same time?
Both meaning,
So you process a packet while the packet's arriving. I mean, you finish processing a packet while the packet's arriving.
yeah, think of it as the packet does not get processed instantaneously. The P sub I means start the processing. I should have said start processing of a packet from flow I. Okay, so when you're in the state, you're actually in the process. You're in the middle of processing that packet. Okay, so when I go to this state, what I'm saying is I am processing a packet from flow 1. Okay, when that finishes, I'll go here, and in this case, I process nothing. Right? If I get an arrival in that state from flow 1, I'll go here and I'll start its processing. Yeah.
Should the 122 point to 220 instead of 210?
The 122 point to 2. Yes. Thank you. 220. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Right. When this packet's done, it comes out. This one moves into the buffer. This one moves into the on deck. And when we're in one, just one more example. When we're in 121, and we're done, that's when we go to 210. This is the one that should have gone there. So this one is. After I'm done processing the packet from flow 1, the packet from flow 2 moves into the processor. The packet from flow 1 moves into on deck, and the second buffer slot is cleared. Okay, you can keep labeling them in this fashion. Yeah, Ari.
Doesn't this thing grow very, very large, very, very fast?
Doesn't?
Doesn't the size of this machine grow really large, like if you were any closer to the end?
Yeah.
And if your buffer would be a normal size, like 20 to 20.
You need a lot of states to accurately model a FIFO queuing system. The FIFO ones actually turn out to be the hardest to model.
So you don't know this way, right? You know this is a normal queuing structure, we're just modeling it this way for like purposes of figuring out how long it'll take and stuff like that.
Yeah, so exactly. So suppose I were to ask this question. Suppose packet arrivals from flow I are exponentially in arrival times. From flow I are exponentially distributed with rate lambda I I'm processing a packet from flow I takes time exponentially distributed with rate mu sub I. Okay, so you understand the question I'm asking? It's just we have this FIFO queuing system, and FIFO queue, 2 flows, buffer size of 2. I can ask, what is the steady state probability that the processor is currently processing a packet from flow 1. Or I guess what's the steady state probability that the processor is empty? Or steady state prob that processor is empty. Okay, ask those questions. One way to get the answer is to model it as a Markov model. Okay, I would draw these states and these transitions, right? And instead of putting these labels on like that here, I could put on the rates. Okay, so I'm not gonna redraw the whole thing, but for instance, let's say I start in state 0, 0, 0, and from there I can move to state 1, 0, 0, or 2, 0, 0, right? And the rate at which I move to this state is lambda 1, and the rate at which I move to this state is lambda 2. If you remember how we did Markov models a long way back, each state represents some aspect of the system, and the lambda sub I means that's the rate at which we move from this state to this state. If the process is exponentially distributed, you can just label it with the rate of the process. Yeah, David.
0, 0, 1. No.
So as soon as a packet arrives to an empty queuing system, it'll get processed. It goes right into the queue. Okay, and this finishes up with rate. But while I'm in this, I may get another packet from flow 1. We're in state 1, 1, 0. Sorry. Okay, you keep drawing this thing. Okay, I'm only drawing part of the. This is part of the Markov model. It would be really complicated. Of the Markov chain, Markov model. Okay, I can keep drawing this thing, and then once I have this huge Markov model, there are numerical tools to solve for the steady state probabilities. Which we're not going to do in this class. Okay, I'm going to write them like this. Pi of x, y, z is the steady state probability Okay, and then the probability that in state, the probability that the queue is processing packet from flow, what I say, flow 1 is the sum over y and z of the pi 1 yz's, right? I solve for the steady state probabilities, and then I sum over all the probabilities that correspond to the states where I'm currently processing flow 1. Okay? Let's say Q is empty. Sorry, processor is empty. It's just going to be pi of 0, 0, 0. It's the only one where this is the only state where the processor will be empty. Okay? So the point is, using these state machines, and if you make Markovian assumptions, meaning that all the events have exponential distributions, then you can actually use this, build the Markov model. There are tools that allow you to solve the Markov model, which I won't require you to know for this class. And you can compute the probability that certain steady state likelihoods. Probability is processing a packet from flow 1. The probability that the packet on deck is from flow 2. Probability to have a packet from flow 1 and flow 2 in the buffer. Probability there are no flow 1 packets in the buffer. Okay, all those questions could be answered using this Markov model. Yeah, Ari.
That says sum over y and z of pi 1 z. Well, 1 y z.
Okay. So on the homework, which hopefully we'll get here, it hasn't come yet, has it? So you're going to be asked to construct these Markov models for round robin systems, fair queuing systems. It's easier to do that than for FIFO, right? So let's do a simple fair queuing example. Okay, again, yeah, Ron. Bottom board. Well, read the whole thing? Oh. What is the steady state probability the processor is currently processing a packet from flow 1? And then or the steady state probability the processor is empty. And it was just different questions we could ask. I mean, there's a whole laundry list of questions we could ask. Just gave 2 examples. Okay. Let's do a weighted fair queuing example, or fair queuing example, of a router processing 3 flows. Let's just say slack of 1 packet allowed. Okay, again, I wouldn't want to do more than, I mean, these examples are really pretty simple. 3 flows, slack of 1, whereas in a real system you may have 20 flows and slack of 100, okay, in which case you could have lots and lots of states, which could still be solved computationally on a computer. You probably want to set up the Markov model on a computer, but it would be very hard to draw on the board. But it's easily extendable to bigger systems. Okay. What do we need to keep track of here to accurately model which packet's currently being processed? Yeah, David. Huh?
Each flow counter?
Okay. Well, the counters count up to infinity, right? Yeah, the difference between counters. Okay, so I'm gonna have a state. Okay, and let's see I equal value of counter I. Okay, first I'm going to keep track of C1 minus C2, and then I'm going to keep track of C2 minus C3. Okay, I don't need to keep track of C1 minus C3 because I can figure that out, right? If I call this value X, I call this value Y, then C1 minus C3 is just X plus Y, right? Okay, and because I'm allowing a slack of 1 packet, what are the allowable values X and Y? 0 and 1 and? One means that counter 1 is 1 step ahead of counter 2. Minus 1, yeah. So let's see. So I could be in the state 0, 0. All counters are the same, right? If I next process a packet flow 1, I will go to state 1, 0. Right? If I next process a packet from flow 2, I will go to the state minus 1, 1. Right? And if I process a packet from flow 3, I will go to the state 0, minus 1. Right? So this is I'll go here when I process a packet from flow 1, here when I process a packet from flow 2, here when I process a packet from flow 3. Right? When I'm in state 1, 0, if I process a packet from flow 1, the allowable state is most 1. So flow 1's counter is not allowed to get more than 1 step ahead of flow 2 or 1 step ahead of flow 3. Right? So if I process a packet from flow 1, I'll just stay here. I'll stay in that state. Okay, if I process a packet from flow 2 when I'm in this state, then this decreases by 1, and this increases by 1. So I go to state 0, 1. Okay. If I process a packet from flow 3 when I'm in this state, I go to 1, minus 1. Okay. If I process, where am I? So I've taken care of this one, I've taken care of this one. If I'm in state 0, minus 1, I get a packet from flow 1, then I go to state 1, minus 1. right? If I'm in that state and I process a packet from flow 2, I go to state -1, 0. Okay, so there's going to be a total of, there's two values, two numbers here, and each of them can take on 3 values. I'm going to have a total of 9 states. I've already drawn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. So what's missing? I don't have 1, 1 yet, and I don't have -1, -1 yet, right? So suppose I'm here and I process a packet from flow 3. That'll take me to -1, -1. And if I'm here and I process a packet from, well, no, that won't get me there. Here and I process a packet from flow 1, I go to 1, 1. Right? Okay, and again, it's a mess. But you could finish by filling in all the different transitions by figuring out what packet gets processed next and how it affects the clocks relative. Yeah.
For state 1, 1, is that?
Counter 1 and 3 could be like constitute packet difference. Or state 1, 1 and 1.
State 1, 1 means that
Next state 1, y is 1, x plus 1.
yeah, okay, yes. And what about with -1? -1 means that -1, -1 means C1 minus C3 is -2. So that can, so those states actually never happen. Yeah, okay. So we made a mistake. These two states cannot happen. So let's see. Suppose let's just do an example here. For state -1, 0. Okay, that would be the case where C1 equals 0, C2 equals 1, C3 equals 1. Right? And suppose I get a packet from flow 3. So what's going to happen? This counter is going to increase to 2. And then because of the rule of the slack, this counter is going to have to increase to 1. Right? So I'm going to go to state 0, -1. Right? And similarly, I drew this one wrong. So when I process a packet from flow 1, so in this example, just for instance, C1 can be 1, C2 would be 1, and C3 would be 0. Okay, if I process a packet from flow 1, this counter increases to 2, this stays at 1, and this would be dragged up to 1. So I would get 1, 0. Right, so in fact I can only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 possible states. Okay. Any other state would violate slack condition. Yeah, Patrick.
Previous example shows keeping track of the this we're on, so why? That's a good question. Okay.
So what do you need to keep track of? For instance, why didn't we keep track of what's in the queue? And the answer is it depends on the set of query functions given. Okay, so let me sort of explain that answer. Suppose I told you that I provide you with a function. F of I, which equals 1 if flow I has a packet in the queue, and 0 otherwise. Okay, if I give you this function, then this state machine would be sufficient. Okay, if you have this function, then whenever you're in a certain state, okay, so for instance, when I'm in this state, all clocks are equal, right? So which flow packet gets processed next is arbitrary, right? When all the clocks are equal, whoever's the packet in the queue, I could choose any of them to be processed next. If I'm in this state over here, right? What we saw is that this state over here, flow 3's clock. This state's basically saying flow 3's clock is behind flow 1, flow 2's clock. So if there's a packet from flow 3 in the buffer, that will be processed next. Okay, if I provide you with this function, f sub I, you can just use a query. So for instance, when I'm in this state, if I could just ask if there's a packet from flow 3 in the queue, right? Then I'll process that packet, and then I'll go somewhere. And I can have another transition that says if there is no packet from flow 3 in the queue, but there is a packet from flow 2 in the queue, then I'll process that next. Okay. If I didn't provide you with this function, then state would also have to capture the set of packet in the buffer. But if I didn't simply provide you with the means to look up that information, then you would need to explicitly keep track of that information. But note for fair queuing, arrival order isn't important. Okay, so all I care about is I have a packet from flow 1 and flow 2 in the buffer. I don't care which one came first, right? Because the order in which they come does not determine the order in which they get processed. The order in which they get processed is fully determined by the current state of their clocks. Well, suppose I knew the probabilities of these FIs. Then I still could, but yeah, I mean, you can't really directly solve it without these FIs. You would actually need, if you assume that the packet arrivals, their inter-arrival times are exponentially distributed, their processing times are exponentially distributed, and you didn't know how to compute the values of these FIs for each state. What you'd have to do instead is also keep track of the status of the buffer. Okay. Actually, technically, something else we didn't keep track of is the packet currently being processed. I mean, if I just drew this to give you an example of how you would model weighted fair queuing. But if I really wanted to solve for the steady state of the problem I was talking about, so actually solve for the steady state. state that keeps track of a lot of information. So I would need, let's see, X, Y, Z, and S. Okay, X and Y. X is the differences. X and Y are the differences in these counters. Okay, Z is the flow of packet currently being processed. And S is the set of packets in the buffer. Okay, where S can equal empty set, packet from flow 1, packet from flow 2, packets from flow 1 and 2, 2 packets from flow 1, 2 packets from flow 2. Okay, since I don't care about the order, I don't need to keep track of 1, 2, and 2, 1 separately. Okay, so it cuts down on half the states I have to keep track of. But I mean, there'll be a lot of states, and I would never want to try and draw this whole thing on a blackboard. But I can draw the transitions out of one state in particular, for instance. So for instance, let me draw 1, 0, 1. Let's say we got. Okay, so here's a state. Flow 1's clock is ahead of flow 2's clock. Flow 2's clock equals flow 3's clock. I'm currently processing a packet from flow 1. I've got a packet from flow 2 in the buffer. Okay? If I have an arrival from flow 1, then I'm going to go to the state 1, 0, 1, 1, 2, right? Flow 1's packet gets put in the buffer. An arrival from flow 2 puts me in state 1, 0, 1. What was I? 2. 2, 2. Right? All I've done is I've put that extra packet in the buffer. If I complete processing the packet that's currently in the buffer, it's a packet from flow 1. The only thing I've got in the buffer are flow 2 packets. Right? So that packet's going to be moved into the processor. So when I'm done, then I'm going to start processing a packet from flow 2. Let's see, here's where things get complicated. So I'm going to start processing a packet from flow 2. So flow 2's counter is going to increase. Okay? So the difference between flow 1 and flow 2's counters is now going to be 0. The difference between flow 2 and flow 3's counters is now going to be 1. I'm processing a packet from flow 2, and my buffer is now empty. Okay, and let me just do one more example in this queuing system. Okay, let me draw a state that's very similar. 1, 0, 1. But suppose I've got a packet from suppose I've got packets from flow 1 and flow 2 sitting in the buffer already. Okay, and let's assume it's a 2-packet buffer system. I can only store 2 packets. So if a packet arrives from flow 1 or flow 2, that packet will be dropped because the buffer is already full. Okay? Now when I'm done processing the packet that's currently in the buffer, what do I do next? Do I choose the flow 1 packet or the flow 2 packet? Or does it not matter? Flow 2, why? Yeah. When this packet finishes being processed, this packet from flow 1, the rule for fair queuing is I always take the flow that has a packet in the buffer with the smaller clock. And flow 2's clock, in this instance, is smaller than flow 1's clock, right? Flow 1's clock minus flow 2's clock equals 1. So flow 2's clock is smaller. So what I'm going to do is when I'm done, I'm going to process the packet from flow 2. That's going to move me to the state. Flow 2's clock will increase, right? So now we have 0 here. Just give me 1 second, Faisal. The difference between flow 2 and flow 3's clock has increased by 1. And now I'm processing a packet from flow 2, and all I've got in my buffer is a packet from flow 1. Yeah?
Clock for flow 3 as well?
Every flow has a clock. Oh! No, you're right, yeah. I thought that we had 3 flows. So, yeah, we also need a 3, and then, let's see. 1, 3, 2, 3. Three. Right? And again, we don't have to worry about the order. So that really reduces the number of cases we need to consider. Yeah, Ezra.
The packet changes when it leaves processing the packet or when
It changes when it begins. Equivalently, we could have done it when it ends. If we'd done it when it ends, the only difference would be instead of making this adjustment based on the packet that's being processed, I have memory in the state machine of the fact that I just finished processing a packet from flow 1. So I'd have to take this transition, increase flow 1's clock because I finished processing a packet from flow 1 instead of one from flow 2. Okay? Any questions on this stuff? Because so I can't see the minute hand. I think the clock is. Did someone see that? The light is 10:15. Okay. If I stand over here, I can see it. Otherwise, the reflection from the light stops me from seeing it. And any questions on this stuff? I mean, otherwise we're moving on to the next topic. Yeah, Faisal.
You might have the function like for the counters. So the functions for the counters, like in that example, you have C3 going from 0 to 1, and C1 going from 1 to 2 on the far right.
1 to 2, C3 goes from 0 to 1. Yeah. So
C1, a packet arrives for C1, so you increment the counter, or is being processed for C1.
we were just looking at the case where a packet arrives from flow 1. a packet from flow 1 is going to start being processed. Okay? And initially, we have C1 minus C2 equals 0, and C2 minus C3 equals 1. Okay? So just as an example, that's the case where you have 1, 1, 0. Okay? Because we're processing a packet from flow 1, C1 is incremented. And because of this, we have a slack of 1. The clocks cannot differ by more than 1. So C3's clock has to be brought up. If you remember the algorithm, right, you have to push up every clock that falls too far behind. And so that's why we increase C3 as well. So it turns out that the absolute values of these, not the absolute value, the actual values don't matter. All that matters is the differences. So you could have started with any values for C1, C2, and C3 that satisfied these differences, and you would have been forced to have, when you increased C1, you would have been forced to bring up C3 by 1 as well. So you would always go from state 0, 1 to state 1, 0. Okay. Okay, we're done. We're done with this. We're finally done with the network layer, and now we're moving on to the transport layer. Okay. So the transport layer has two functions: reliability and flow and congestion control. Okay, so if you're designing protocols for the transport layer, this is effectively what the system looks like. You have a machine over here. You've got this network, and out the other end is another machine. Okay, and you're going to send packets into this network, and the network knows how to route. You just give it the address of this other machine, and it'll figure out how to get the packet there, right? We looked at how that's done. That's done in the network layer, right? So the transport layer, what we're concerned with is this network may drop packets. Okay, why may it drop packets? Well, you may have a buffer overflow. Right? In what we modeled before, we said, suppose you have a 2-packet buffer. I mean, in practice, they're much larger. They're 20-packet buffers. But every so often, a packet comes into a router, it's got no more space to process it, so it'll have to drop that packet. Okay? Or bit errors detected but could not be corrected. Right? So when, remember, we talked about coding. Sometimes you can correct some bit errors. Sometimes you can detect them, but your code isn't smart enough to correct them. So you just drop a packet that was sent. Okay? So network may drop packets, and so that's. And 2 is there may be large delays. Okay? And so the transport layer is supposed to compensate for these two phenomena. Who's heard of TCP/IP? Just out of curiosity. Okay. IP, this is the network link protocol. And TCP is the most frequently used transport layer protocol. And they're used so frequently together, it's often just referred to as TCP/IP. Okay, the TCP, the transport layer protocol, that's responsible for making sure that packets don't get lost, packets don't get sent too fast. Or lost packets are recovered, I should say. And we'll talk about a couple of lectures what too fast means. And IP is responsible for pointing packets toward the right direction. Okay, so I guess our postal system is so good. I mean, you don't know when the letter's going to arrive, but if you mail a letter, it always gets there. Okay, so you got to imagine the internet is like a crappy postal system, where you can give it a letter, and the postal system always sends it in the right direction, but a lot of times things get lost. You know, like somebody steals the truck, or somebody, the driver just quits the job and abandons the truck in the middle of the highway or whatever, and the stuff just gets lost. Okay, so if you want to communicate with a friend, okay, you might send a letter. Your letter may never get there. So how do you make sure your friends receive the message? So we're going to look at the reliability aspect of protocols first. Okay, so there's A trying to communicate with B, and A wants to send B a message. So it sends out this message, right? And who knows the message got there? Okay, so what you can do is you can send multiple copies of it and hope that one gets there. But suppose you really, really want to make sure that it got there. Okay, and suppose you have several messages to send. M1, M2, M3, M4. Okay. How do you know whether or not they got there? Well, B is going to acknowledge your messages, right? ACK stands for acknowledgement. ACK, I got your first message. ACK, I got your second message, etc. So if I don't get an acknowledgement after a certain amount of time, or maybe the B can even send me a negative acknowledgement. NACK. 3. Never got your third message. Okay. Problem is, B's messages can also get lost. All right. So things start to get complicated. So, maybe it's like shouting across a room at a noisy party. You don't know if the other person understands you unless they say, "I got what you said," right? And if you're not good at reading lips, you might not hear them. So, you tell them like, "Hey, we're leaving at 10 o'clock." And then from the other end, "Ah!" And then, you have to ask. Maybe they said, "What did you say?" Or maybe they said, "I got it." So you got to tell them again, "We're leaving at 10 o'clock." And then, they don't respond. Maybe they didn't hear you that time. "We're leaving at 10 o'clock." "Okay, I got it. We're leaving at 10. Right? Now you know that the message has been successfully transmitted. Although maybe your friend doesn't yet know that you know that they know what time you're leaving, right? So anyway, so we're out of time. We'll talk about this next time. And look at protocols that do the reliable.